The Old West, a place as rugged and unpredictable as the people who lived there. In the late 1800s, the frontier was a vast, untamed expanse where survival often boiled down to two things: speed and accuracy. Gunslingers roamed this land, each carrying a six-shooter and a reputation, carving their names into the dusty trails and dark saloons of the wild frontier. They were the heroes and villains of an age without rules, where justice was often decided by the quickest draw. But who were these gunslingers really? Why did their names inspire fear, respect, and a sense of wonder? Were they cold-blooded killers, folk heroes, or simply men and women trying to survive in a world where mercy was a luxury? In reality, the Old West's gunslingers were more than just outlaws. They were former soldiers, gamblers, ranchers, and vigilantes, each driven by their own set of values, or lack thereof. Some sought revenge, others justice. Many were just out for themselves, playing by their own rules in a world that didn't have any. They defied the boundaries of hero and villain, blending both into something raw, powerful, and unforgettable. Every standoff, every gunfight, was a life-or-death struggle in a world where a single shot could alter the course of history. Today, we're counting down the top 10 most feared gunslingers of the Wild West. These are the figures whose lives became the stuff of legend, though each legend holds a grain of truth, a glimmer of the fierce, unyielding spirit that defined the frontier. So, buckle up and get ready. From infamous criminals to legendary vigilantes, these are the names that haunted the saloons, the stories whispered around campfires, and the lives that continue to captivate us. Stick with us until the end, because some of these gunslingers took secrets to their graves that still fuel speculation and fascination. Who will come out on top as the deadliest gunslinger of them all? Let's dive into the countdown with number 10. Kicking off our countdown at number 10 is William Curly Bill Brocious, a name that still echoes through the dusty streets of Tombstone, Arizona. Known for his wild and unruly behavior, Curly Bill wasn't just another gunslinger. He was the rowdy and unpredictable leader of the Cowboys Gang, a group infamous for terrorizing towns with chaotic violence and drunken escapades. Curly Bill was a man of many contradictions. By day, he led his gang across the untamed frontier, reveling in the lawlessness of the land. But by night, with whiskey coursing through his veins, he became something even his own gang feared. His recklessness reached a tipping point in 1880 during a confrontation with Marshal Fred White. In a fit of drunken rage, Curly Bill pulled the trigger, and a bullet struck White down. Although some argued it was accidental, the result was real. White would never recover. Curly Bill was brought to trial, but in a surprising twist, he was acquitted after White, on his deathbed, vouched that the shot had been an accident. But Curly Bill's troubles were far from over. The Cowboys' feud with Wyatt Earp escalated, especially after Earp's brother Morgan was killed. Wyatt's thirst for revenge would come to a head in a final showdown with Curly Bill himself. In the heat of battle, Wyatt Earp ambushed Curly Bill, taking him down with a single, deadly bullet. Curly Bill's reign in Tombstone ended in bloodshed, sealing his place in history as one of the most feared gunslingers of the Old West, and fueling a vendetta that would become legendary. Coming in at number 9 is Sam Bass, a man who started as a humble cowboy, but soon veered into a life of crime that would make him infamous across Texas. Unlike some of the other notorious figures on this list, Sam didn't grow up around violence or outlaws. He began his life on the frontier as a ranch hand and cattle driver, carving out a modest living. But when he and his partner Joel Collins decided to pocket the profits from a cattle sale in Nebraska, they set off a chain of events that would plunge Sam into the world of outlaws. Instead of sticking to honest work, the two friends squandered the cash in Deadwood, where Sam discovered an appetite for quick money and excitement. With his sights set on bigger scores, Sam and his gang took to robbing stagecoaches and trains across the frontier. His most famous heist came in 1877, when he and his crew managed to steal $60,000 in gold from a Union Pacific train, a massive haul that sent shockwaves through the region. This robbery not only put him on the map, but also put the Texas Rangers hot on his trail. For over a year, Sam eluded capture, his robberies growing bolder and his reputation expanding. But as the Rangers closed in, his luck began to run out. In 1878, during a raid in Round Rock, Texas, Bass was finally cornered and fatally wounded in a shootout with the Rangers. As he lay dying, Sam Bass's name was etched into the annals of the Old West, a testament to how a small-time cowboy could become a symbol of greed, daring, and the inevitable fate that awaited those who lived by the gun. At number 8, we have James "Killer" Miller, a man whose calm demeanor and outward piety hid a dark reputation as one of the deadliest killers for hire in the Old West. Known for attending church regularly and presenting himself as a family man, Miller was anything but ordinary. Beneath his polite exterior lurked a ruthless assassin who took lives for profit, building a name that struck fear into outlaws and lawmen alike. Unlike many on this list, Miller approached killing with methodical precision. He didn't rely on instinct or the chaotic energy of a street fight. Instead, he planned his hits down to the last detail, often wearing a bulletproof steel plate under his coat to ensure he could walk away from any confrontation alive. Rumors swirled that he killed at least 14 men, though some say his count may have reached as high as 50. Miller's calculated approach made him a valuable asset for those willing to pay for his services, and he took on jobs that others would have avoided. One of his most infamous kills was the assassination of former lawman Pat Garrett, the man who had shot Billy the Kid. This hit solidified Miller's reputation as a man who would take on anyone if the price was right. But in 1909, Miller's violent career came to a brutal end. Captured by a mob in Ada, Oklahoma, he was lynched alongside 3 accomplices. Standing on the gallows, Miller remained defiant to the end, famously shouting, "Let her rip," just before the rope dropped. His chilling last words have since become part of the legend, marking the end of a man who lived and died by the gun. At number 7, we have Belle Starr, famously known as the Bandit Queen of the Wild West. Unlike other gunslingers, Belle wasn't known for her quick draw or high body count. Instead, she wielded a different set of weapons: charm, wit, and an uncanny ability to survive in a male-dominated, lawless land. Belle's life reads more like a drama than a traditional outlaw story, marked by love, betrayal, and a string of criminal alliances that cemented her legendary status. Belle's journey into the world of crime began through her relationships. She first married Jim Reed, a known outlaw who introduced her to the lifestyle, and together they lived on the fringes of society. Even after Reed's death, Belle didn't shy away from danger. She later became romantically involved with Sam Starr, a Cherokee outlaw, and together they hosted some of the most notorious criminals of the time, including Jesse James and the Younger Brothers. Belle's home became a safe haven for outlaws on the run, earning her a reputation as the West's Queen of the Outlaws. Despite her involvement in criminal activities, Belle used her charm and intelligence to evade the law numerous times. Her wit kept her one step ahead of authorities, and she managed to avoid lengthy prison sentences, even when arrested. But in 1889, her luck ran out. Belle was ambushed and killed on a remote trail near her home. To this day, her murder remains unsolved, adding a layer of mystery to her story. Belle Starr's life and death left behind a legacy as one of the most enigmatic and feared figures of the Old West. A woman who lived by her own rules in a world that was anything but forgiving. Sliding in at number 6, we have the Sundance Kid, a man whose name has become synonymous with outlaws of the Old West. Known for his sharp shooting and cool demeanor, Sundance wasn't just another gunslinger, he was a legend in his own right. His partnership with Butch Cassidy and their notorious Wild Bunch gang cemented his place in history as one of the most feared and admired train robbers of his time. Born Harry Alonzo Longabaugh, he took on the name the Sundance Kid after serving time in jail in Sundance, Wyoming. From there, he crossed paths with Butch Cassidy, and the two became inseparable partners in crime. Together, they pulled off a series of high-profile robberies, hitting trains and banks with daring precision that left law enforcement frustrated and communities on edge. Their exploits became the talk of the frontier, with tales of their skill and audacity spreading like wildfire. But the Wild West wasn't big enough to hold them forever. With lawmen closing in, Sundance and Cassidy fled to South America, hoping to evade capture. They settled in Argentina, living a quieter life while attempting to leave their criminal past behind. But the allure of quick money was too strong, and soon they were back to robbing banks and trains. In 1908, rumors emerged that Sundance and Cassidy were killed in a shootout with Bolivian authorities. However, mystery shrouds the truth, with some insisting that Sundance survived and returned to the US under a new identity. Whether he died in Bolivia or lived in secrecy, the Sundance Kid's life remains an enigma, embodying the thrill and danger of the Wild West. Coming in at number 5 is Butch Cassidy, the charismatic leader of the Wild Bunch and one of the most celebrated outlaws of the Old West. Known for his charm and cunning, Cassidy wasn't just another gunslinger. He was a criminal mastermind who knew how to play both sides of the law. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he preferred to avoid bloodshed, relying on his wits and strategic planning to pull off daring heists. Born Robert Leroy Parker, Cassidy adopted his infamous alias early on in his criminal career. With a knack for rallying talented outlaws, he formed the Wild Bunch, a group that would become legendary for their precision and skill in robbing trains and banks. Under Cassidy's leadership, they successfully orchestrated a string of high-profile robberies across the western frontier, amassing both wealth and notoriety. Their exploits were so audacious that even the press began to romanticize their deeds, casting Cassidy as a sort of gentleman bandit. Butch Cassidy wasn't all about crime. He occasionally worked as a rancher, using his earnings to establish a legitimate front. However, the law eventually caught up, and the pressure from Pinkerton detectives and other law enforcement agencies made life increasingly difficult. Cassidy and his loyal partner, the Sundance Kid, decided to flee to South America, hoping to start fresh and leave their criminal past behind. In 1908, reports surfaced of Cassidy and Sundance's deaths in a shootout with Bolivian soldiers. Yet, like many legends of the Old West, doubts linger. Some believe Cassidy survived the shootout, returning to the US under an assumed name. Whether he died in Bolivia or lived on in secrecy, Butch Cassidy's legacy as a cunning and charismatic outlaw endures to this day. Taking the number 4 spot is Cole Younger, a man whose life was shaped by both loyalty and vengeance. Growing up in Missouri during the Civil War, Cole and his family endured terrible losses at the hands of Union soldiers. His father's murder was a turning point, igniting a fierce desire for justice, or perhaps revenge, that would define his life. Alongside his brothers, Cole abandoned any hope of a peaceful existence and joined forces with Jesse and Frank James, forming the infamous James Younger Gang. This gang quickly gained a reputation for their bold tactics and refusal to submit to Union authority. Cole was known not only for his bravery, but also for his strategic mind, which made him a valuable asset in the gang's many bank and train robberies. These weren't just random heists. For Cole, each robbery was a symbolic strike against the North, a reminder of the injustices his family had faced. The gang targeted banks with ties to Union support, transforming their crimes into acts of defiance. Their reign came to a bloody end in 1876 during the attempted robbery of the First National Bank in Northfield, Minnesota. The townspeople fought back fiercely, leading to a chaotic shootout that left several gang members dead and forced Cole and his brothers to surrender after sustaining serious injuries. Captured and sentenced to life in prison, Cole used his time behind bars to reflect on his past and ultimately sought a path of redemption. Released on parole after 25 years, Cole Younger devoted his later life to advocating for reform. His transformation from a vengeful outlaw to a speaker on the benefits of lawful living adds a complex, redemptive layer to his legacy, making him one of the most intriguing figures of the Wild West. At number 3 is John Wesley Hardin, a man whose name struck fear into the hearts of many and whose life was marked by violence from an early age. Born into a time of deep-seated conflict and raised in the Reconstruction South, Hardin was involved in his first killing at the age of 15. That incident set off a chain of violent encounters, shaping his path as one of the deadliest gunslingers in the Old West. Hardin's kill count is staggering. He claimed to have killed more than 40 men, many of them in self-defense or during heated arguments. But it wasn't just the number of kills that set Hardin apart. It was his almost compulsive need to avoid capture and his ability to escape from any situation, no matter how dire. Known for his quick reflexes and incredible accuracy, he evaded the law multiple times, becoming a legend in his own right. One of Hardin's most infamous incidents was his run-in with Wild Bill Hickok in Abilene, Kansas. Hardin was hiding out there under an alias, and despite the tension between the two, a grudging respect formed. But Hardin's violent streak couldn't be tamed. Shortly afterward, he killed a man for snoring too loudly in a hotel room, sparking a manhunt that sent him fleeing yet again. After years on the run, Hardin was finally captured and sentenced to prison. During his time behind bars, he studied law and attempted to reform, but freedom was short-lived. In 1895, while playing dice, Hardin was shot in the back by an enemy. His death was as violent and sudden as the life he had led, solidifying his reputation as one of the most ruthless and unrepentant gunslingers of the Old West. At number 2 is the infamous Billy the Kid, a figure who has come to symbolize both the romance and ruthlessness of the Wild West. Born Henry McCarty, he was an orphan by the age of 15, forced to fend for himself in a harsh world that offered little mercy. Known for his boyish charm and quick wit, Billy wasn't just a killer. He was a folk hero, captivating the public's imagination with his blend of charisma and unpredictability. Billy's journey into infamy began during the Lincoln County War, a violent feud between rival ranching factions in New Mexico. Siding with one of the factions, Billy became a gunman, taking part in numerous shootouts. He was quick, deadly, and often seen with a smile on his face, a combination that made him both feared and admired. Legends say he killed 21 men, one for each year of his short life, though the actual count may be closer to 9. Despite his reputation, Billy had a softer side. Friends and allies described him as loyal, humorous, and surprisingly kind, especially to those he trusted. But his life on the run left little room for sentimentality. After multiple arrests and daring escapes, he was finally captured by Sheriff Pat Garrett. Even then, Billy managed to escape from a heavily guarded jail, adding to his growing legend. But in 1881, at just 21 years old, Billy's luck ran out. Garrett tracked him down to Fort Sumner, New Mexico, and shot him dead in a darkened room. His death marked the end of an era, yet the mystery and myth surrounding Billy the Kid only grew, transforming him from an outlaw into an enduring icon of the Old West. At the top of our list is the legendary Jesse James, a name that has become synonymous with outlaw rebellion in the American West. Raised in Missouri, Jesse's life took a dark turn during the Civil War. As a young man, he joined Confederate guerrilla forces, learning the brutal tactics of guerrilla warfare and developing a deep-seated resentment for Union authorities. This anger would fuel his later life of crime, turning him into one of the most feared and celebrated outlaws of his time. With his brother Frank, Jesse formed the James Younger Gang, a group that would go on to commit some of the most audacious robberies in American history. Banks, stagecoaches and trains became their targets as they carved a path of violence and rebellion across the Midwest. To the public, Jesse wasn't just a criminal, he was a symbol of resistance, a man who defied the authorities that many saw as corrupt. Newspapers romanticized his deeds, portraying him as a modern-day Robin Hood, though there's little evidence he shared his spoils with anyone but his gang. Jesse's notoriety only grew as law enforcement struggled to capture him. He lived in constant fear of betrayal, often moving from place to place to avoid capture. But in 1882, it was treachery that finally ended his life. Hoping to claim a reward, Robert Ford, a member of his own gang, shot Jesse in the back while he was adjusting a picture on his wall. Ford's betrayal was condemned, and Jesse's death immortalized him as a tragic figure, an outlaw who lived and died by his own rules. Even in death, Jesse James's legacy lives on, embodying the daring, defiance, and deadly allure of the Wild West. And there you have it, the top 10 most feared gunslingers of the Wild West. Each of these figures left behind a legacy that continues to echo across time, shaping our perception of the Old West as a place of danger, survival, and legendary tales. They were outlaws and vigilantes, each driven by their own reasons, whether revenge, justice, or the pursuit of freedom in a lawless land. But as much as they lived by the gun, they were also products of a ruthless world where strength and courage often blurred the lines between hero and villain. These gunslingers were more than just outlaws. They were symbols of defiance against a society that seemed to leave little room for mercy. Men and women like Jesse James, Billy the Kid, and Belle Starr didn't follow rules. They made their own. They stood against the authority of the law, lived on their terms, and left behind stories that have captivated us for over a century. Their actions, both brutal and brave, were reflections of a time when survival often came down to a quick draw and a steady aim. But what can we learn from these stories today? The tales of the Old West remind us of the complexity of human nature, the choices we make when driven by survival, loyalty, or the need to protect our own. These gunslingers may have been feared, but they were also admired for their courage, and they left behind legacies that ask us to consider the price of living by the gun. So, as we look back on these figures, remember, the Wild West wasn't just a place. It was an era of raw ambition and fierce independence. The stories of these gunslingers are reminders of a time when the frontier was a blank canvas, and every man and woman had to paint their own path, whether in law or defiance of it. If you enjoyed this look into the Wild West's most infamous figures, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. There's a world of history left to explore, and we'd love for you to join us as we uncover more legends of the past. Thanks for watching, and until next time, remember, sometimes the greatest legends are born from the harshest places.